The cry for help the galaxy was silent that night, at least to those who listened across the endless dark. From a small world on the far edge of a forgotten sector, a desperate signal was sent. It was weak, broken, and filled with fear. The people who sent it knew their chances were almost nothing. They were farmers, traders, and families with no soldiers among them. Their skies had burned for weeks as an unknown enemy reigned, destruction on their homes. The message carried only a few words. "We are dying. Please, anyone, help us." Most civilizations that heard it turned away. The message crossed through many networks and relays, but no council, no alliance, no empire dared to answer. They all knew what lurked behind such cries. Answering could mean war. Answering could mean destruction. So they looked away, hoping someone else would care. But there was one truth whispered across the galaxy. One name carried both terror and hope. Humanity. Long ago, humans had vanished from the galactic stage. They had fought wars no other species wanted to remember. Wars so brutal that entire armadas were shattered, and empires swore never again to provoke them. Then, as suddenly as they rose, humanity disappeared. Their fleets were not seen. Their colonies went dark. Their star systems were closed. Some said they had destroyed themselves. Others believed they were only sleeping, waiting for a reason to return. And now, the cry for aid drifted into human space. On a lonely listening station orbiting a dead world, old machines caught the signal. The message was cracked, half lost. In static, but its meaning was clear: an innocent world under attack, calling to the stars with nothing but hope. The machines passed it along through silent relays until it reached the heart of hidden humanity. There, in vast command halls buried beneath steel and stone, leaders listened. They studied the call, and they remembered. For centuries, humanity had stayed away, not out of weakness, but out of choice. They had learned the galaxy feared them. They had learned the galaxy hated them. But this was different. This was not a council request. This was not an empire begging for soldiers. This was a desperate cry from those with no power at all. The human leaders spoke few words. There was no debate. The message had been heard, and the decision was made. Ready the fleet. Across hidden shipyards, lights came alive. Engines that had slept for generations roared once more. Colossal vessels, each one large enough to carry the power of nations, rose from their cradles. Soldiers, long trained but never used, marched into hangars. Old banners were lifted from the shadows, their symbols sharp, their warnings clear in the darkness between stars. Humanity prepared to move again. The people who had sent the cry did not know what was coming. They expected silence. They expected to be forgotten. They did not know that the most feared species in the galaxy had heard them and had chosen to answer. But the enemy who attacked them would soon learn the truth, because when humanity returned, it was never in peace. Asterisk the silent awakening. The enemy believed the small colony was theirs to crush. They had swept across weak planets before, striking with fire and fear. Their fleets were swift, their weapons brutal, and no one had ever stood against them. They expected no resistance this time either. Only another burning world, another trophy. What they did not know was that their attack had woken something the galaxy wished to forget. Human space had been silent for so long that many thought it abandoned. But deep beneath barren planets, and inside black stations hidden in the void, humanity had never stopped preparing. They remembered every betrayal, every broken treaty, every time the galaxy had looked at them with fear instead of trust. When the cry for aid reached them, the silence ended. Dark hangars opened to the stars, releasing warships that dwarfed anything seen in centuries. Sleek destroyers with armored hulls, carriers large enough to swallow fleets and command ships shaped like blades of steel. The engines of these giants lit the void in fire-blue light, and with them came the soundless promise of war. Inside the flagship, soldiers stood in formation. They were not young, eager recruits. These were hardened warriors, bred from generations of training. Every human who joined the fleet knew the truth. If they ever left their hidden systems, it would not be to return quietly. It would be to remind the galaxy why humanity was feared. Orders were given without shouting. Commands moved like cold wind through the ship's halls. Arm the batteries. Prepare the drop wings. Synchronize the jump drives. For the first time in centuries, the fleet was awake, but humanity did not move with wild rage. They moved with precision, with patience. They did not charge blindly at the enemy. They studied them first. Drones were released ahead of the fleet, cloaked and silent, slipping into enemy space. They recorded everything: the shape of their ships, the pattern of their patrols, even the way their weapons charged before firing. Every detail was captured and carried back. In the strategy chambers, commanders studied the enemy like hunters watching prey. They saw arrogance, they saw weakness, and they planned how to strike. Meanwhile, far away on the colony under siege, the people hid in caves and ruins. They had almost given up hope. Their signal had been sent weeks ago, and no one had come. They whispered to each other that maybe the galaxy did not care. Maybe no one would ever save them. Children cried quietly in the dark, while their parents tried to comfort them with empty words. But then, one night, a strange light appeared in their skies. It was not the fire of enemy bombardment. It was something colder, sharper. A shadow passed over the stars, vast and silent, and those who saw it could not believe their eyes. For above them, hidden in the clouds of space, humanity's fleet had arrived. No announcement was made. No warning was given. The humans did not speak to the enemy. They did not negotiate. They simply prepared their weapons, their ships aligning like a pack of wolves ready to strike. The first shot was not loud. In fact, no one on the ground even heard it. But in orbit, the lead enemy battleship split apart in silence, torn in half by a single beam of human fire. Panic spread instantly through the enemy fleet. They had expected resistance, maybe even help from another weak species. But they had not expected this. They had not expected them. The colony survivors did not yet understand. They only saw flashes of light tearing across the night sky, the heavens lit with sudden fire. They did not know who fought for them, only that someone had come at last. In the flagship, the human commander gave a single order, cold and sharp: show them what they feared. And so, humanity began its return, not with words, not with mercy, but with war. The first strike, the enemy fleet scattered as the first of their ships broke apart. They had been so sure of their power, so certain that no one in this part of the galaxy could resist them. But the silent fire that struck from the void was something they had never seen. It was not the clumsy barrage of ordinary weapons. It was clean, precise, final. One enemy cruiser tried to turn and flee, its engines burning bright, but before it could escape, 3 lances of light pierced its hull. The ship cracked open like glass, its crew never even having time to scream. Another warship tried to fire its cannons, but the moment its energy core flared, a human missile found it, tearing it apart in a blaze that lit the skies above the colony. On the ground, the survivors looked upward, their mouths open in disbelief. The night sky had become a battlefield of fire. Explosions bloomed like terrible stars. Trails of burning wreckage streaked across the heavens, crashing into the mountains and seas with thunder that shook the world. Children pointed in awe, while their parents whispered prayers, not knowing if this was salvation or the end. But inside the colony caves, old elders remembered. They had once heard stories, told in whispers, about the humans. They were a people who vanished long ago, but whose name was carried like a curse across the stars. They had been called many things: warriors, destroyers, monsters. But one thing was certain: when humans fought, the galaxy trembled. And now, those old stories seemed to come alive again. High above, the enemy tried to rally. Their commander, a proud figure with a history of easy victories, shouted orders across his fleet. He demanded that they form a line, that they concentrate fire on the largest of the human ships. Dozens of cannons lit up, energy bolts flashing through the void. But the humans did not fight like ordinary fleets. Their flagship shifted position, its armored hull gleaming in the starlight. Smaller vessels darted like wolves, surrounding their prey. Enemy fire passed through empty space, missing targets that moved with terrifying precision. Then, in the blink of an eye, human ships struck back. Entire enemy squadrons vanished under concentrated fire, each blast timed perfectly, each kill merciless. It was not a battle. It was a hunt. One by one, the enemy ships died. Their proud fleet, once feared by the weak, now tore apart in panic. Crews begged their commander to retreat. They wanted to flee, to live, but the humans allowed no escape. Every retreating ship was tracked, caught, and destroyed. On the ground, the survivors finally saw the truth. The ships above the saviors who had come were not unknown. They were the humans. The realization spread like fire through the colony caves. Fear and relief mixed in every heart. If the stories were true, then they were saved. But at what cost? The colony leaders gathered and argued in whispers. Some said they should hide, stay silent, and pray that the humans ignored them once the battle was done. Others said they should try to speak, to thank them, though their voices trembled. One knew what the humans would do next. Meanwhile, the enemy commander felt his power crumble. His fleet was gone, his soldiers screaming through broken channels. Only a handful of ships remained, and even those were crippled. He stared at the giant human flagship that now loomed over the battlefield like a shadow of death. The humans did not send demands. They did not ask for surrender. They only sent one message across the open channel. Their voice, cold and sharp, carried on a language the galaxy had nearly forgotten. You came here to burn the helpless. Now you face us. There will be no mercy. The enemy commander froze. In that instant, he understood the old warnings, the reason whole empires had once sworn never to fight them. He tried to speak, tried to beg, but before his words could form, the human fleet unleashed its final strike. Dozens of enemy ships exploded at once. The sky above the colony lit up with the fire of their deaths. The night became brighter than day, and then, just as quickly, it was silent again. The enemy was gone. Only humanity remained, but the people on the colony knew the war was not over. If the humans had returned, the whole galaxy would soon feel their presence again, and not everyone would welcome it. The aftermath. The battle was over. The sky above the colony was quiet again, but the silence felt heavy. Wreckage floated in orbit, glowing with the fading fire of ruined ships. Shattered hulls fell like dying stars, some burning through the atmosphere, others drifting into endless night. The enemy was gone, erased in less than an hour. On the ground, the people emerged slowly from their hiding places. The caves emptied one by one as families stepped out, shielding their eyes from the ash-filled sky. They looked upward with both awe and fear. The saviors who had destroyed their tormentors still lingered above, their massive ships forming a steel wall against the stars. Some wanted to cheer. Some wanted to weep in relief. But no one dared make a sound too loud, as if afraid those great warships might turn their weapons downward. The colony leaders gathered on a hill overlooking the ruined city. Fires still burned in the streets. Smoke twisted into the night air. They debated in hushed voices, but none could agree. Should they try to contact the humans? Should they thank them? Or should they remain silent and hope the fleet would vanish as quickly as it had appeared? An elder, his face lined with years of hardship, spoke at last. The old stories said the humans never leave a battle unfinished. If they came for us, then we are not forgotten. But do not think them gentle. They fight for reasons only they understand. His words carried through the crowd, planting both hope and fear. Up above, inside the human flagship, soldiers moved through wide metal corridors. They carried no joy at their victory. Their faces were hard, their eyes sharp. To them, the destruction of the enemy was not triumph, it was duty. They had answered a call for help, and in answering, they had declared something far greater. Humanity was no longer silent dot in the command chamber. The human leader stood before a great screen displaying the broken battlefield. Around him, officers gave reports. Enemy fleet destroyed. Colony damage severe, but not total. Survivors confirmed that the leader spoke only a few words. Prepare contact. It was not a request. It was an order. On the colony, an ancient transmitter long damaged by bombardment suddenly came alive. Its static cleared, and then, for the first time in generations, the voice of humanity spoke across the world. This is the Terran fleet. Your attackers are destroyed. You are safe. The survivors listened in silence. The words were simple, almost kind, but the tone was sharp and cold, carrying the weight of authority. It was the voice of a people who had seen too much war to speak with softness. The colony leaders answered carefully, their voices trembling. We thank you. Without you, we would have been lost. The humans did not reply at once. When they finally spoke again, their words carried a warning. Others will come. Your enemy will not forget this defeat. And when they return, they will not come only for you, they will come for us all. The message ended. Panic spread among the colony leaders. If the humans were right, then the battle was not the end, it was the beginning. By answering their call, the humans had revealed themselves to the galaxy once more. Every empire, every alliance, every enemy would know that humanity was awake again. The elders whispered of what might come. The younger ones asked what to do next. And still, above them, the fleet lingered, silent and watchful dot at night. Children pointed at the dark shapes in orbit, asking their parents if the humans would protect them. But the parents had no answer. Protection was not something humanity gave freely. They had not come as saviors. They had come as warriors. And yet, deep in their hearts, the survivors felt something new, something they had not felt since the war began. Hope, not gentle hope. Not soft comfort, but a sharp, burning hope, born from fear and strength dot, because if the humans truly stood with them, then perhaps the galaxy was not as hopeless as it seemed. But far away, beyond the colony, across endless stars, other powers had already felt the echo of battle. Sensors had recorded the clash. Silent watchers had seen the fleet. Messages carried the terrible news across empires and councils. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Asterisk the galaxy. Reacts the news spread like fire through dry grass. Across the galaxy, networks carried whispers that soon became shouts. The enemy fleet had been destroyed, not by a council patrol, not by some rising empire, but by them, by the humans got it first. Many refused to believe. Humanity had been silent for so long that even the oldest records felt like myths. Some thought the reports were lies, tricks spread by frightened colonies. But then the evidence arrived. Black box fragments of destroyed ships, sensor data from far-off probes, and the voices of survivors all told the same story. Humanity had returned dot in the Grand Council, a chamber that stretched like a cathedral into the void, leaders of many species gathered in chaos. They shouted over one another, their voices filled with fear. Some demanded immediate action fleets should be raised, defenses doubled, borders sealed. Others said humanity should be welcomed back, spoken to with respect before they turned. Their power against the galaxy once more. The council speaker, an old being whose species had seen dozens of wars, slammed the floor with his staff. "We must decide," he roared. "Are the humans friend or foe?" But no answer came. For no one knew in distant empires. Warlords trembled. Some remembered the old wars, when human fleets had shattered armadas 3 times their size. They remembered planets reduced to ash, fortresses leveled in days, and warriors who fought with a fury that seemed endless. Those warlords swore to avoid conflict. But others, arrogant and blind, whispered that humanity was only a shadow of its former self, that this was their chance to destroy them. Before they grew strong again, merchants and traders carried the news from world to world. On backwater colonies, children listened wide-eyed as stories spread of burning skies, of ships that moved like predators, of weapons that ended battles in moments. To them, humanity sounded less like people and more like legends, half hero, half nightmare. Meanwhile, the enemy whose fleet had been destroyed screamed for vengeance. Their leaders were furious. Entire bloodlines had been lost in the battle, fleets erased in silence. They swore an oath before their people. The humans would pay. Armies were called. Shipyards glowed as new warships were forged. What had been a simple conquest of a weak colony was now the beginning of a holy crusade. But while the galaxy argued and plotted, humanity remained quiet. Their fleet did not invade new worlds. They did not announce a grand return. They simply watched, waiting, preparing inside their hidden systems. Leaders debated in shadowed halls. Some argued they should remain apart, strike only when needed, and let fear do the work for them. Others demanded they rise again, stronger than before, to remind the galaxy that humans were not to be crossed. And beneath the steel halls of their fleet, the soldiers sharpened their blades and prepared their weapons. To them, it did not matter what the galaxy thought. They had already chosen their path. On the small colony they had saved, life struggled to return. The people rebuilt homes, buried their dead, and tried to believe they were safe. But even as they worked, their eyes always turned to the skies. Where the dark shapes of human ships still waited, the elders warned their children to show respect, to never anger their protectors. But the younger ones whispered of hope, of power. They said that if the humans could destroy an entire fleet in a single night, then perhaps no empire could ever enslave them again. Hope and fear mixed like fire and smoke, impossible to separate. And far away, on the edge of human space, the fleets grew larger. The silence of centuries had ended. The galaxy was right to be afraid, for the humans had heard a cry for aid, and in answering it, they had reminded everyone of a truth buried in time. When humanity fights, they do not stop. The enemy's vow of revenge. The empire that had attacked the small colony was in chaos. Their fleets were broken, their commanders dead, their pride shattered. Never before had they been struck so hard, so fast. They had always been the predators, never the prey. But now, their people whispered of fear. In their capital world, a planet of black stone and burning skies, the High War Council gathered. The chamber was vast, lined with banners of victories past. Yet those banners seemed to mock them now, reminders of glory turned to ash. The supreme warlord, scarred from a lifetime of battles, slammed his clawed hand against the table. "One word has returned to the galaxy," he growled. "Humans." The others hissed at the name. Some remembered their ancestors' warnings. Others remembered the ancient battles recorded in secret archives, fleets swallowed in fire, armies erased without a trace. But the warlord's pride was greater than his fear. "They destroyed one of our fleets," he roared, his voice echoing through the hall. "They humiliated us before the galaxy. If we do nothing, every world will think U.S. weak. Every ally will turn their back. No, we will strike back. We will show the humans that we are not prey." His generals bowed, though their eyes betrayed unease. They obeyed, for refusal meant death, but deep inside they trembled. Across there, Empire, factories screamed with life. Shipyards grew hot, burning day and night to forge new war machines. Massive cruisers rolled from dry docks, bristling with cannons. Troop transports filled with soldiers prepared to march. The Empire's people were told a simple story. The humans were monsters, and monsters must be destroyed. Songs of vengeance spread through their armies. Propaganda showed humans as demons, faceless shadows with eyes of fire. Soldiers cheered. But in their silence, many wondered if even the strongest weapons could defeat the legends they had been taught to fear as children. Still, the warlord would not stop. He declared a vow before the Empire's blood shrines. "We will erase humanity from the stars. This I swear." But words were not enough. He sent messengers across the galaxy, calling for allies. He promised riches, power, and vengeance if they joined him in crushing the humans. Some listened. Some laughed. And some, in secret, sent warnings to the humans themselves, for they feared what would come. Back on the rescued colony, the people could feel the storm gathering. Scouts reported enemy movements. Traders whispered that the Empire was building a fleet larger than ever before. Fear returned to the colony, heavier than before, because they knew the humans had painted a target on them by answering their cry dot at night. Mothers held their children close, staring at the sky where the human ships still lingered. They asked themselves, would the humans stay to protect them, or would they leave them to face vengeance alone? The humans gave no answer. Their fleet remained silent, their warships hanging in the void like dark sentinels. But deep inside, preparations were already being made. In the flagship's command chamber, human officers studied enemy reports. Maps glowed on the screens, showing enemy fleets gathering like storm clouds. The commander stood silent, watching, his hands clasped behind his back. "They will come," one officer said. "They always do," the commander replied. No panic, no fear, only certainty. The humans had seen vengeance before. They knew it well, for they had lived by it once, and they knew how to answer it with overwhelming force. But this time, something was different. They had not gone looking for war. War had come to them through a cry for help. And because of that, they carried not only their own pride, but the hope of those they had saved. The commander gave a final order: ready the fleet. When they strike, we strike harder. And so, in hidden shipyards and buried armories, the humans prepared once more. Soldiers checked their rifles, pilots tested their fighters, and great war machines stirred awake. The galaxy did not yet know it, but the vow of revenge made by the enemy would not lead to humanity's destruction. It would lead to their own, because when humans are challenged, they do not yield. They answer with fury. Asterisk, the war unleashed the enemy came at dawn, if dawn had meaning in space. Their fleet was vast, a wall of steel and fire stretching across the stars. Countless ships bristled with cannons, their engines blazing as they closed on the small colony. From orbit to deep space, their arrival was like a storm swallowing the horizon. On the ground, the survivors saw the sky filled with shadows. The air itself seemed to tremble. Children cried as parents pulled them into shelters, their hearts heavy with the memory of the last attack. This time, there would be no escape. But above them, humanity waited. The Terran fleet hung silent, dark against the void, their weapons cold but ready. The enemy commander, drunk with pride and fury, broadcast across all channels. His voice thundered, in cruel triumph. Humans, you dare return to the stars? You dare defy us? Today we end you. Today we erase your kind forever. No human voice answered Dot instead. The fleet moved. The humans struck like predators unleashed. Their ships cut through the void with terrifying precision. Massive cannons lit the black with white fire. Missiles streaked like falling stars. Enemy ships that had been built with pride and vengeance shattered within seconds, torn apart before. Their crews could even understand what they faced, but the enemy was not weak. They had brought their full strength, and they fought with rage. Their warships spat fire in every direction, and soon the space above the colony became a furnace of light and death. Explosions shook the heavens. Hulls split open, spilling burning. Debris. Fighters screamed between massive ships, dueling in twisting arcs. The galaxy itself seemed to shudder beneath the clash. From the ground, the people watched in terror and awe. The battle was not just war, it was judgment. Two powers colliding, one ancient and feared, the other proud and desperate. Inside the human flagship, orders came like cold thunder. Form the line. Target their carriers. Release the drop wings. And so, humanity revealed its true strength. From the bellies of their warships, swarms of smaller craft poured into the battle. Dropships filled with armored soldiers descended toward the enemy, boarding their vessels with ruthless speed. Human marines, clad in black steel, stormed the enemy ships. They fought in silence, their weapons precise, their movements like shadows. To the enemy soldiers, it was not war, it was slaughter. For every human that fell, 10 of their foes were cut down. The enemy commander watched in horror as his grand fleet burned. His warships cracked apart. His soldiers begged for mercy that would never come. He had sworn before his people that he would erase humanity, but now he saw the truth. It was he who would be erased. And then the human spoke. Asterisk, a single message, broadcast across every channel, every frequency, every world within. Reach, we did not seek war. But when the helpless cry out, we will answer. Let the galaxy remember. The message ended, but the battle did not. Humanity unleashed its full fury. Entire formations of enemy ships vanished under coordinated fire. Their last carriers, once symbols of power, broke apart like dry wood under storm waves. Finally, the enemy flagship itself was surrounded. Human ships circled it like wolves, firing in merciless rhythm until the proud vessel cracked and fell silent. The enemy commander's last scream was lost in the fire. The war was over. Above the colony, the void was filled with wreckage. What had begun as a desperate invasion ended as a graveyard of steel. Humanity had not only defended the helpless, they had carved their warning across the stars. On the ground, the survivors wept. They wept for their dead, for their homes, and for the terrible saviors who had come. Yet their tears carried hope too, because now they knew they were not alone. And across the galaxy, fear returned. Empires whispered in dark halls. Councils argued in panic. Armies trained with shaking hands. Humanity was awake again, and this time they would not be forgotten. For the desperate cry for aid had been answered, and the galaxy's most feared had returned.